The galaxy was burning. For many years, the Zorks had fought the Varn Empire. The Varn were powerful, cruel, and without mercy. Their warships were fast. Their soldiers never showed fear. Planet after planet had fallen. The Zorks tried to fight back, but they were too weak. Their fleets were smaller. Their weapons were older. And now, even their hope was fading. General Sarek stood inside the command room on the last safe Zorik planet. His skin was gray, his eyes tired. He looked at the large screen in front of him. Red dots showed the enemy ships. So many of them. Too many. His officers spoke in low voices. No one smiled. No one believed they could win. "This is the end," Sarek said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. Their last fleet was surrounded. Their cities were full of fear. Their leaders had no more plans. "We send the last message," said one officer. "We ask for peace." Peace. Sarek shook his head. The Varn don't give peace. They destroy. Always. There was nothing left to say. The war was lost. The Zorks had fought with everything they had. But it wasn't enough. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and alone. Then something strange happened. A signal appeared on the screen. It was weak at first, just noise. But then it grew stronger. A new voice came through. It didn't speak the Zorik language. It was something else. Something different. The voice was calm, strong, and clear. "This is Earth," the voice said. "We received your signal. We are here to help." Everyone froze. What is this?" one officer asked. "Earth?" Sarek repeated. "That name. I've seen it before. A minor world. Far away. They're not part of the war," another said. "They've never joined any side." "But now they speak," Sarek said. "Why now?" The signal came again. This time with a small image. A ship, big and strange looking. It didn't look like Zorik ships or Varn ships. It had sharp angles, thick armor, and strange lights. Behind it, more ships followed. The voice came once more. "We are the Terran Defense Fleet. Stand by for support." The Zorik command room filled with whispers. Officers looked at each other with wide eyes. Who were these humans? Why would they help? And could they really make a difference? Sarek was silent. He looked at the screen for a long time. Then he turned to his officers. "Tell our last fleet not to surrender," he said. "Delay the Varn. Hold them back. They won't survive," one officer said. "I know," Sarek answered. "But help is coming. Maybe." The last Zorik fleet was already under attack. Varn ships surrounded them, firing with deadly force. Zorik ships fell one by one, exploding in space. The enemy was closing in. It looked like the end. Then, without warning, the space around the battlefield changed. Strange shapes jumped out of hyperspace. 10 human ships, then 20, then more. They moved fast, in perfect formation. They opened fire before the Varn even noticed them. Their weapons were sharp, powerful, and accurate. A huge Varn cruiser exploded in seconds. The Zorik soldiers watching from below couldn't believe it. The human ships danced through enemy lines, dodging fire, returning with precision. One Varn ship tried to run. A human fighter followed and destroyed it with one hit. The humans were winning. Back in the Zorik command room, the officers stood in silence. No one spoke. No one blinked. Sarek stared at the screen. "They fight like they've done this 1,000 times," he said. "They move like predators," whispered another officer. The signal returned. The human voice spoke again. "We've secured the area. More ships are on the way. Prepare for further instructions." Sarek took a deep breath. For the first time in many years, he felt something strange. Hope. He didn't know why the humans had come. He didn't know if they would stay. But one thing was now clear. The war was not over. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, it could be won. Because the humans had arrived. The Zoriks had never seen anything like the humans. After the surprise attack that pushed the Varn back, the strange new allies did not disappear. Instead, they sent a direct message to the Zorak High Council, asking for a formal meeting. Their voice was clear, calm, and confident, very different from how the Zoraks spoke when facing a superior enemy. General Sarek stood at the landing bay as the human shuttle arrived. The ship was smooth, silver, and silent. It landed without sound. As the door opened, 5 humans stepped out, wearing dark armor with glowing lines. Their leader was a woman with short black hair and sharp eyes. She looked around once, then walked toward Sarek. "I'm Captain Alina Ward," she said, "commander of the Terran Defense Fleet." Sarek nodded slowly. "General Sarek of the Zorak Resistance. You have our thanks. And our confusion." Alina smiled just a little. "We saw your distress signal. We saw what the Varn were doing. And we don't like bullies." Sarek raised an eye-ridge. "You came to help, just like that." "We came because we've been through this before," she said. "A long time ago, Earth faced something like this. No one helped us. We survived alone. Now, when we see others suffering, we don't turn away." The Zorak officers took them into the war chamber. The humans looked around, calm and silent, studying everything. No fear, no hesitation, just focus. Sarek began showing them data. Battle maps, enemy formations, failed plans. "We've tried every known tactic," he said. "The Varn learn fast. They adapt." Alina leaned over the map. Her eyes moved quickly. "They adapt," she said, "but they don't expect chaos." "Chaos?" Sarek asked. She tapped one part of the screen. "They expect logic, order, patterns. We don't play that way." Another human, a tall man named Harris, stepped forward. He pulled up his own hologram and showed an old battle simulation. The ships moved strangely, diving at odd angles, stopping suddenly, then attacking from behind. The enemy fell apart in confusion. "This is how we fight," Harris said. "Hit where they don't expect. Leave traps, break their rhythm." The Zoraks watched with wide eyes. They had never seen these tactics before. They didn't even think such things were possible in space combat. Sarek frowned. "But this isn't how most species fight. It's unstable." "That's why it works," Alina said. She turned to face the room. "Let us join your next battle," she said, "not to watch, to lead." The Zorak Council hesitated. Some were unsure. Could these humans truly be trusted? Could they really make such a difference? Sarek made the final call. "We're already losing," he said. "We have nothing else to lose." The next day, the Zoraks and humans prepared for a joint strike. A small mining moon was under attack. It was not a big target, but it was close to several civilian zones. Losing it would open a path to more planets. Human ships flew at the front. They were fewer in number but stronger. Zorak ships followed behind, supporting the assault. As the Varn fleet approached, they came in tight formation as always, strong, proud, and predictable. Then the human ships broke formation. One ship looped behind an asteroid. Another dropped lower into a gravity well. One powered down its engines and floated silently. The Varn hesitated. They didn't know what to target. Suddenly, one human ship activated again and fired a decoy missile. The Varn chased it. The missile exploded in a cloud of static. From the mist, 2 human ships jumped forward and disabled the Varn leader. The battle lasted just 7 minutes. The Zoraks barely had time to engage before the fight was over. Afterward, Sarek watched the reports. "They didn't just win," he said softly. "They played with them." Later that night, as the human and Zorak teams returned, Alina met with Sarek alone. "You have good soldiers," she said. "They're brave, but not trained like yours," Sarek replied. "How did you learn this kind of war?" She looked at him, her face suddenly quiet. "Because we had to," she said. "Once, Earth was nearly destroyed. We were alone. We fought each other, even destroyed cities. In that pain, we learned what war truly means. Sarek nodded slowly. Now you bring that knowledge to help others. Alina didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at the stars. We help those who need it, she said. But we also watch carefully. If the Varn are this strong, then something worse may come one day. And we need allies who understand what it means to lose everything. Sarek felt a chill at her words. The humans had come. They had helped. But it was clear they had seen horrors that the Zoreks couldn't yet imagine. And now, the real war was just beginning. The Zorek fleet moved into position above the moon of Karsus 7. It was a rocky mining colony with no major value, but it was the perfect test. The Varn had returned to claim it, not because they needed it, but because they wanted to send a message. No one could stand against them. But this time, the message would be answered. The humans arrived in silence, their ships drifting into the battlefield like shadows. Captain Alina Ward gave no grand speeches, no warning. She simply said, "We'll show them how we fight." Zorek Commander Vexen, who had served in dozens of battles, watched from his control screen with disbelief. The human ships didn't follow the usual formation. They didn't even fly together. Instead, they scattered in all directions, disappearing behind moons, asteroids, and radiation fields. Vexen opened a comm link to the lead human ship. "You are breaking formation. This will cause confusion." "That's the point," Alina replied. The Varn ships arrived moments later, a wide fleet of 30 war cruisers. They came in perfect lines, with shields raised and weapons armed. Their leader, High Marshal Carex, expected another easy victory. The Zoreks never lasted long. But this time, something was different. The human ships began moving. One appeared behind the Varn fleet and fired a strange device that exploded with no damage, just blinding light. At the same time, another human ship dropped out of orbit and jammed enemy radar. The Varn ships turned and fired. At nothing. Then, from above, a human battleship dived at full speed, engines roaring. It crashed through the enemy formation, guns blazing in every direction. 3 Varn ships exploded before they even reacted. Vexen could hardly believe his eyes. "They're not fighting," he whispered. "They're hunting." The Zorek ships moved in as backup, targeting weak points in the enemy line. For once, they weren't losing. For once, they could see victory. Inside her command ship, Alina watched everything unfold with cold focus. She wasn't just leading the battle, she was studying the enemy. Every move the Varn made, every mistake she remembered. "They're predictable," she said to Harris, her second in command. "They don't know how to handle chaos." "They'll learn fast," Harris replied. "Then we'll stay faster." One human ship, a smaller corvette named the Night-class, flew straight into the Varn command line. The Varn fired everything they had, but the ship was just a hologram. A second later, the real Night-class decloaked behind them and launched 2 torpedoes directly into the Varn command ship's engines. The explosion lit up space. The Varn began to retreat. It was over in 12 minutes. Not a single human ship was lost. After the battle, the Zoreks cheered in their command halls. Some cried. Others just sat in silence, stunned. They had never won like this. Not in years. General Sarek watched the footage again and again. He didn't cheer. He didn't celebrate. He simply stared. "These are not ordinary allies," he said. "They fight like they've done this forever." Alina joined him later. She walked into the room, still in her armor, and watched the screen with him. "You've changed the war," Sarek said. "No," she replied. "We've only opened a door. What comes next will be harder." He turned to her. "You've seen worse than the Varn, haven't you?" She nodded. "We've fought enemies who made planets vanish, enemies who whispered lies into our minds. The Varn are dangerous, yes, but they're loud, obvious. That makes them easier." Sarek looked away. "Then what do we do next?" "We keep winning," she said, "and we prepare for what might come after." She didn't explain what she meant, but Sarek could feel it. The humans hadn't come just to help. They had come with purpose, with experience, and maybe with fear. That night, as the damaged Zorik ships returned home, the humans stayed behind. They didn't rest. They scanned the area, checked every signal, watched for anything strange. They were looking for something more. Because deep in human memory, there were wars darker than this one, and somewhere in the stars, something worse might be watching. The Varn Empire did not understand what had just happened. For decades, they had ruled with strength, crushing any resistance. Their tactics were simple but effective: overwhelming force, tight formations, and fast strikes. It always worked, until now. Now something new had arrived, something they had never seen before. The humans. After the loss at Karsus 7, the Varn leaders held emergency councils. Angry voices filled the dark war halls. Some called for more ships. Others blamed spies. No one wanted to admit the truth, that they had been outsmarted. High Marshal Carex reviewed the battle recordings over and over. He watched human ships move like hunters, strike from shadows, and disappear again. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors, unpredictable, ruthless, efficient. "They are not warriors," Carex growled. "They are something else." The Varn prepared a new fleet, bigger, stronger. This time, they would crush the humans and show the galaxy that Varn power could not be challenged. Meanwhile, aboard the TDS Iron Will, Captain Alina Ward stood in front of a star map, drawing lines and points of attack. Around her, her officers watched, silent and focused. "They'll come harder next time," Alina said. "We embarrassed them. That means they'll try to show off. And that means they'll be predictable." Commander Harris raised an eyebrow. "You want to bait them." "I want them to think we're afraid," Alina said. "Then I want them to walk into our trap." The plan was simple. A Zorik fuel station would send a false signal, pretending to be damaged and undefended. The Varn would see it as an easy victory. What they wouldn't know was that it was heavily armed and full of human tech. The Zoriks were nervous. This kind of trick was not their way. "We are not used to lying in war," Sarek said. "That's why it will work," Alina replied. "Because they think you're predictable." When the trap was set, the humans disappeared into hiding. Their ships powered down, hiding behind asteroid fields and energy clouds. They didn't move. They didn't make a sound. Then, right on time, the Varn came. A massive fleet, 50 warships strong, dropped out of hyperspace. They surrounded the fuel station, weapons hot and shields up. The Zoriks inside the station sent out panic signals. Just as planned, High Marshal Carex appeared on the Varn command screen, watching coldly. "Begin destruction." And then the station exploded. But it didn't explode because of the Varn. It exploded on its own, releasing thousands of tiny floating drones into space. They were small, silent, and almost invisible. Each one carried a signal jammer and a shock pulse. The Varn fleet went blind. Their screens turned black. Their targeting systems failed. Their shields dropped for just a moment. And in that moment, the humans struck. The Iron Will came in first, guns blazing. Behind it, 10 more human ships fired with perfect timing, hitting engines and shield cores. The Varn tried to respond, but their formation broke within seconds. Every time they turned to face an enemy, the humans were already gone. From a hidden moon base, General Sarek and his team watched in amazement. The battle looked like a dance, one side flailing in chaos, the other moving with perfect rhythm. "Do they ever miss?" one Zorik officer asked. "No," Sarek said quietly. "They don't miss. They don't guess. They know." The Varn lost 20 ships in 5 minutes. The rest ran. Some tried to jump away. Others simply drifted, disabled, and defeated. When it was over, the humans didn't chase. They let them flee. They'll go back and report what they saw. Alina said, "That's what I want. Let the Varn Empire know that the galaxy has changed." Later that night, Alina sat alone in her quarters, staring at a small screen. It showed Earth. Green fields, blue oceans, clouds moving gently across the skies. She touched the screen, just once, then closed it. Commander Harris entered. "Another perfect win," he said. "No such thing," Alina replied. "They'll adapt. They always do. That's what makes them dangerous. But we're smarter. We're older," she said. "Not in years. In pain. In loss." There was a long silence. "Do you think they know who we really are?" Harris asked. "No," Alina said. "Not yet. The Zorax think we're heroes. But we're not. We just remember what it's like to be broken." In the cold space between stars, the war was changing. And the humans were leading that change, with shadows, speed, and silence. But deep in the dark corners of the galaxy, something else was watching, and it had just learned a new name: Earth. The wreckage of the Varn fleet drifted silently through space. Charred hulls, broken wings, and twisted metal slowly spun in the void, floating reminders that the impossible had happened. The Varn had lost. Twice. The galaxy was listening now. Rumors spread like wildfire. The Varn were defeated by a new species, the humans. They fight like no one else. They don't lose. On the Zorak homeworld, the High Council gathered in secrecy. Every member wore a look of fear, awe, and confusion. They watched battle footage frame by frame, how the humans moved, how they planned, how they anticipated. Some believed the humans were machines. Others thought they were part of some ancient warrior race. But General Sarek knew better. "They are like us," he told them. "But they have lived through a darkness we cannot imagine. That's why they're so effective. They've already seen the end, and survived it." Still, some council members were worried. "If they are this strong," one asked, "what happens when they no longer need us?" Sarek had no answer. Far away, aboard the TDS Iron Will, Captain Alina Ward reviewed sensor scans. Her eyes were heavy from lack of sleep, her mind still locked in the rhythm of war. But something strange caught her attention. A faint signal, pulsing from deep space. It was not Varn, not Zorak, and not human. "Where's it coming from?" she asked. "It's not coming from anywhere," Harris said, staring at the data. "It's echoing, like it's bouncing between systems." They amplified the signal. A low tone filled the command room. At first, it sounded like static. But then, a pattern emerged. 3 pulses, then silence, then 3 more. Alina's expression hardened. "That's not a message," she said. "That's a warning." The crew grew quiet. Harris checked deeper. "There's no origin, but it matches something we saw back during the Rim Wars. A ghost signal. We thought it was a trick. Now I'm not so sure." Alina stood still for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Prepare the Zorax. Tell Sarek. The Varn are not our biggest problem." On the edge of Varn space, High Marshal Carex received the same signal. He didn't recognize it, but something about it felt wrong. Ancient. He stood before a large display, where a Varn scientist trembled under his gaze. "You say this is not human." "No, Marshal." The humans responded to it, but they did not create it. "Then who did?" The scientist swallowed hard. "We don't know, but it was last recorded 5,000 cycles ago, in the Lost War." Carex turned to look at the stars. For the first time in his life, he felt a sliver of doubt. "Then perhaps," he said, "we are all fighting the wrong enemy." Back on the Iron Will, the humans and Zorax gathered for a secret strategy meeting. Alina stood at the center, the ghost signal playing softly in the background. The Zorak officers looked uneasy. Some were afraid. Others were confused. "This signal is old," Alina explained. "It was buried in data archives from Earth's earliest space scans. We thought it was nothing, but it's been growing louder. Someone, or something, is waking up. Sarek crossed his arms. What is it? Elena didn't speak right away. Then she looked at him, serious. We don't know, but we've seen this pattern before. In ruins, in abandoned systems, every time, entire planets have been wiped clean. No life, no machines, just silence. You think it's a weapon. I think it's a test, and we just made enough noise to be noticed. The room fell silent. Commander Harris leaned in. If they're watching, they'll come. They will, Elena said, which means we need to prepare, not just for another war, for something worse. Sarek shook his head slowly. We were fighting for survival. Now it feels like we've just stepped into something ancient, something bigger than all of us. You have, Elena said. Welcome to humanity's real war. Later that night, Elena stood alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The ghost signal pulsed quietly in the background. 3 pulses. Silence. 3 more. She whispered to herself, I've heard this before, in the ash worlds. Memories rushed back. Her first command. A colony that vanished without warning. No survivors. No wreckage. Just a similar signal and the cold silence that followed. She had hoped it was a one-time nightmare, but now she knew better. This war, the one against the Varn, was just the beginning. The real enemy hadn't arrived yet, but it had noticed them, and it was listening. The Iron Will had barely entered the new sector when the silence took on a different feel. The stars around them seemed darker, colder, as if the very fabric of space was watching. Elena stood at the bridge, staring out into the void, feeling the weight of a growing tension that had been building ever since that strange signal had first been detected. The ghost signal had now become a constant hum, a low, unceasing rhythm that echoed in the background of every conversation. But even as they monitored it, nothing about it made sense. It was like a melody from an old, forgotten song, haunting and endless, but impossible to follow. Anything yet? Elena asked Harris, who was focused on a terminal. Still nothing definitive, he replied, his voice tight. We've checked every possible frequency, run simulations, and scanned for any known ships or life signatures in the area. There's nothing, but the signal is growing stronger. Elena's brow furrowed. It's like it's getting closer. He nodded, agreeing but adding, but it doesn't make sense. There's no sign of any ships coming from the origin of the signal. No sign of life at all. Just the signal. It's like it's coming from the space between stars. Elena turned to Sarek, who had been quietly observing. The Zoriks are ready, he said, his voice calm, but there was a clear tension in his eyes. Our fleet can engage at any time. But we need to understand what this is first. If this is some kind of weapon or trap, we'll walk right into it. We need to know what we're facing. Elena didn't speak immediately. She knew this wasn't just about fighting another enemy. Something far older was out there. Something that had been hidden for eons. Days passed with no new developments, but the sense of impending danger grew heavier. The ghost signal was now unmistakably louder, throbbing like a pulse deep within the ship's systems, and it felt as though every heartbeat resonated across the Iron Will. The crew was on edge. They couldn't escape the sensation that they were being watched. Then, late one evening, just as Elena was about to retire for the night, the alarms went off. Captain Ward, Harris' voice crackled over the comm. You need to see this. She raced to the bridge. Harris stood by the main display, staring at the data streaming across the screen. We've got movement, he said. And it's not a Varn fleet. It's something else. I can't get a solid lock, but the signal is definitely coming from that direction. Elena took a deep breath. She had felt this coming, but seeing it in real time was something else entirely. Sarek joined them at the screen. This isn't possible. These readings, they're not like anything we've encountered before. Anything specific? Elena asked. "We've got spatial anomalies," Harris said, pointing to the screen. "Distortions, the kind we only see in theoretical discussions about ancient spacefaring civilizations. But they can't be real. Or they're real in ways we can't understand," Elena murmured. She turned to Sarek. "Prepare the fleet. All ships in position. We may not have time to analyze it further." They were already moving into the unknown. The first sign that they weren't alone came when the distortion field seemed to deepen. The edges of space itself seemed to ripple, like a blanket was being pulled tight across the stars. Elena's stomach twisted with the growing sense of dread. She wasn't sure what was coming, but it was clear. The galaxy was about to be forced into a new era, whether it was ready or not. Suddenly, the distortions flared, and a dark shape appeared in the distance, huge, like a floating city made of shadow and metal, but so massive that it swallowed light itself. It had no markings, no recognizable shape, and no sign of movement. It was ancient, alive with an eerie stillness that radiated across the dark expanse. "That's it," Harris whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "That's what the signal was leading us to." Elena's voice was cold. "Who are they?" "Whoever they are," Sarek said grimly. "They're old. Older than anything we know." Elena's hands clenched into fists. "It's here, and it's not alone." In a moment, the darkness of space seemed to thicken. More shapes began to emerge, gliding out of the shadows like creatures made of night itself. They were massive, triangular ships, sleek, silent, and unsettlingly perfect. There were hundreds of them. The signal grew louder. "They're coming," Elena said. "Get ready." Her words barely left her mouth when the first shot rang out. It wasn't a blast of energy. It wasn't even a missile. It was like a wave of pressure that bent space itself. The force sent shockwaves through the iron will, making every piece of metal groan as if it might snap. The ship rattled, and alarms blared in a frenzy. "Damage report," Elena shouted. "We've lost power to external shields," Harris said, his voice shaking. They're bypassing our defenses. The energy signatures, nothing in our database matches." Elena turned to Sarek. "Order the fleet to retreat, now. All ships, break formation. Scatter." But it was too late. The enormous ships were already upon them. They moved with a terrifying, absolute precision, bending the very laws of space as they closed in. The Zorak and human ships scattered in desperation, but it was clear that none of them would escape without a fight. And then, as the darkness consumed everything in front of them, Elena saw it. A single ship, the largest, moved forward. It was unlike anything they had seen before, the edges of its hull pulsating with dark energy. It opened a massive portal, and from the depths of that opening, a terrifying figure appeared. It was humanoid, but nothing like a human or a Zorak. It was tall, unnaturally slender, with eyes that glowed like twin stars. It stepped forward with eerie calm, a presence that seemed to suck the very air from the room. It spoke, but not in any language known to either species. The words were deep and resonating, like the sound of thunder vibrating through the bones of the universe. Elena's heart pounded. She had no idea who, or what, this being was, but it was clear that humanity had just stumbled into a war that even the Zoraks feared. And there was no going back. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made every breath feel like an effort, as the colossal ships hovered around them. The vast emptiness of space stretched infinitely, but in that moment, it felt like everything had collapsed into the small, fragile space inside the iron will. The being that had emerged from the dark ship stood at the center of it all, its presence more suffocating than the vacuum of space itself. Elena stood at the helm, her gaze locked on the figure before her, heart pounding in her chest. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. How had they gone from fighting the Varn to standing face to face with this entity? The beam moved slowly, its tall, impossibly thin form gliding with a terrifying grace. There was a fluidity to its movements that felt unnatural. It didn't walk. It seemed to glide across the floor, as though gravity had no hold on it. Its eyes glowed with an intensity that made Alina's skin crawl. It had no visible mouth, but the voice came anyway, deep and resonant, reverberating through the very bones of the ship. "You are the humans," it said, its tone like an earthquake rumbling beneath the surface of reality. Alina didn't answer immediately. She was too stunned, too confused. She had read about alien races, the possibilities of life beyond Earth, but none of it had prepared her for this. Another voice, this one coming through the ship's comm system, crackled to life. "Captain, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies," Harris reported. "Whatever this thing is, it's distorting reality. We're not in normal space anymore." Alina glanced at the redouts on the bridge, seeing the stars themselves bending and warping, like the fabric of reality was being twisted. It was as if they weren't in the same universe anymore. "We need to get out of here," Sarek said urgently, his voice tight with fear. "If this being can warp space like this, we're at its mercy." But Alina didn't move. Instead, her eyes remained locked on the creature. She couldn't explain it, but there was something in its presence that felt familiar. It wasn't just powerful. It felt ancient, old, like it had witnessed the rise and fall of galaxies. The being finally spoke again, its voice sending a shiver down her spine. "You have disrupted the balance. You should not have awakened us." "We didn't wake you," Alina stammered. "We don't even know who or what you are." The being's eyes flickered, and a strange, incomprehensible symbol appeared on the ship's main display screen. It pulsed in time with the beat of the ghost signal. Alina's heart skipped a beat. The signal wasn't random. It was a beacon, a call to this entity. "You have broken the silence," the being continued, "and now you must understand what you have done." Alina swallowed hard. "What do you want?" The being's gaze seemed to pierce her, as if it could see into the deepest parts of her soul. "I do not want anything. I need nothing. I exist beyond such desires. But your presence here, you humans, you are a curiosity. A mistake. A mistake." Sarek's voice was filled with disbelief. "What do you mean?" "The timeline was correct," the being said, its voice unchanging, unwavering. "The galaxy was on a path. You have interrupted it. Your species was not meant to survive, not meant to prosper. Yet you have thrived. You have expanded faster than anyone anticipated. And now you have drawn attention. Attention." Alina's mind raced. "From who?" The being raised a hand slowly, and the air around them seemed to shimmer, as if reality itself was being folded and unfolded in an endless loop. The stars outside blinked out, leaving only the creature's glowing eyes. "You are not alone," it said. "We are not alone. And you have been noticed." In a heartbeat, the distortion around them shifted again. The vastness of space was suddenly filled with hundreds of dark ships, ships that looked like nothing the humans or Zorex had ever seen before. They appeared from the depths of the cosmic storm, their sleek, angular forms cutting through the void like predators closing in on their prey. The figure's voice grew louder, as though its very words were becoming a part of the atmosphere, seeping into every crevice. "The others have heard your call. They have awakened, and now you will face them." Alina's heart skipped a beat. She had expected a fight, a battle. But this wasn't just another enemy. It wasn't just another conquest. This was something on a scale she couldn't comprehend, a force so ancient and powerful that it could reshape the entire galaxy, and maybe more. "Who are they?" Alina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are the others?" The being's eyes burned brighter, and the answer it gave was like a cold wind sweeping through the ship. "We are the architects, the builders of the foundations, the ones who seeded the stars. And now, we will reclaim what was lost." With those final words, the ships around them began to pulse with energy. The distortion grew stronger, and the fabric of space itself seemed to tear. Alina felt the ship lurch as if it was being pulled in every direction at once. "We need to move, now," Sarek shouted, his voice laced with panic. But it was already too late. The energy from the dark ship surged, and with it, a violent shockwave that tore through the iron will. Every system on the ship shut down, lights flickering, alarms blaring. The ship was being sucked into the void. Alina gripped the edge of the command console, her mind racing. "We can't outrun this," she muttered, her voice filled with dread. "They're not just going to destroy us. They're going to unmake us." Just then, a flash of brilliant light erupted from the heart of the storm. A beam of pure energy cut through the darkness, and Alina's mind screamed in agony as the space around her distorted into something impossible. The beam was coming for them, relentless and unstoppable. And as the last remnants of reality around her began to unravel, Alina realized the truth. The war they were fighting was not just for survival. It was a war to exist, a war to hold on to the very fabric of the universe itself. But as the darkness closed in, one thought echoed in her mind above all others. They had only just begun to understand the true cost of their survival.